Surveillance technologies have outpaced democratic controls. A generation ago, surveillance was extremely expensive. There was a natural limitation imposed upon it. That is, that governments had to spend huge, extraordinary sums to track lone, isolated individuals. To know a particular person's location might involve many teams of officers, both in buildings and out on the streets, working in shifts. But today that dynamic is reversed. One guy sitting in front of a monitor can track with precision an unimaginably large number of people. For the first time in human history, it's both technologically and financially feasible for governments to track and store nearly complete records of our private lives. Now, this is not science fiction. This is happening now. When we look at the construction of facilities such as this, the NSA's data center in Bluffdale, this was called by them the MDR, the Massive Data Repository. They called it that for a reason. This was not the targeted data repository. This was not something that was designed just to watch this person or that person. It's because they were ingesting everything, everywhere, and saving it in case it might be of interest later, in case something came up. Someone who previously there was no justification to watch, someone who had committed no crime, someone who was an ordinary person would have their life captured, crystallized, compressed, and stored perfectly, timelessly for 5 years or more, just in case they wanted to look at them. And this is what's happening today.
SpaceX took the first step towards its orbiting internet system late Thursday. A Falcon 9 rocket launched from Florida's Cape Canaveral with a payload of 60 small satellites. Eventually, CEO Elon Musk wants to put 12,000 up there.
As these smart technologies begin to invade our homes, we are becoming mere nodes in a giant network that we yet but dimly comprehend. Called the Internet of Things, the plan is to create a network that will eventually include every single object on the planet. And as the public is finally becoming aware, such networks provide golden opportunities for corporations and governments alike to collect data and spy on the population. This is not mere conjecture. Before becoming enmeshed in an affair that ultimately derailed his career, former CIA Director David Petraeus bragged openly about how these smart technologies would allow intelligence agencies to spy on everyone in their own homes using their own appliances. Speaking at a summit for In-Q-Tel, the CIA's venture capital firm, Petraeus noted, "Items of interest will be located, identified, monitored, and remotely controlled through technologies such as radio frequency identification, sensor networks, tiny embedded servers, and energy harvesters." In practice, these technologies could lead to rapid integration of data from closed societies and provide near-continuous, persistent monitoring of virtually anywhere we choose. Whether Petraeus' own downfall as a result of FBI eavesdropping on private emails is part of a plan to warn future would-be whistleblowers, poetic justice, or mere irony, it is nonetheless instructive. When everything that anyone does is tracked, traced, and databased at all times, from our dishwasher usage to our television viewing to our toilet flushes, no one will be able to avoid the gaze of the state, regardless of whether or not they have something to hide. As IT World's Kevin Fogarty observed, if J. Edgar Hoover were alive, he would die of jealousy at the technologies available to the would-be big brothers of today. For the unimaginative out there, Hollywood yarns like Enemy of the State have provided fictional examples of what can go wrong if someone, somewhere, abuses the power of information and surveillance to target an innocent person in the wrong place at the wrong time. To be sure, the power that these technologies give for agencies or corrupt groups within those agencies to destroy the lives of targeted individuals is itself a fitting answer to the question of why government surveillance should be troubling to us. But beyond what can happen to specific targeted individuals in such a scenario is a much larger question. What if this data were being fed into a database so gargantuan it contains a digital version of every single person on the planet? And what if that database were being used by the Department of Defense to wargame various scenarios, from public reactions to natural disasters to the likelihood of civil unrest in the wake of a declaration of martial law. Remarkably, this is precisely what is happening.
In 2017, whistleblower and former security contractor at Amazon, Brian Coffrin, disclosed a top-secret mind control weapons program involving some of the largest companies in the world and the federal government of the United States.
I refer to it as a social engineering program. I refer to it as a research and development program. And it's very, very concerning because the people that are in charge of this program are people that are concerned with society on the macro level. They are concerned with grand visions of how society is working and how they want to change it to get it more the way they want it to work. Supercomputer software programming will manipulate the emotions and the behavior and the thoughts of everybody in the United States of America. And it can all be done remotely. It can be done simply by targeting you with the frequency, locking into the resonant frequency of your DNA and your mind, and in that manner completely track and trace and control you 24 hours a day.
Dr. Church, the Financial Times had a write-up about an effort in Switzerland called the Blue Brain Project. It goes a little technical, but it says in stimulating neural circuitry, it's involved in the process is an IBM Blue Gene supercomputer feeding data from the studies of real brains to build a virtual brain. Can you expand on that?
Sure. We do hope, as we did in the Genome Project, to have an internationally coordinated project. What we're doing in the United States already and will in the brain activity map include computational modeling. But the emphasis will be on measurement and stimulation, which allows you to test the models that are developed in computers. We're going from outer space, detecting dark matter, to inner space, seeing about our brains, using DNA at every step, and most importantly, using citizen science. The next generation of sequencing devices may well be these molecular electronics hybrids, which so-called nanopore sequencing, where we have DNA polymerase that helps couple to ion channels, and you basically convert DNA information into ionic information into computer information. So that's going from DNA to ions, but for the brain, we're interested in the opposite, going from ions to DNA. You can imagine very inexpensive biological cameras, and you could have all the neuronal firings in the brain, which could be encoded into DNA. And we now have molecular nano devices that can do this. They can go from light to DNA, and they can go from ATP, other small molecules of DNA. So ions to DNA, and these are some of the graduate students and postdocs involved in this project. Ions to DNA, we have the ion channels that are going through the spiking, or in some cases, the non-spiking behavior that Ted talked and Ed talked about. But here, it's influencing the fidelity of the DNA polymerase so that the time series of the calcium, say, turns into a spatial series of changes in the DNA sequence, which you can then read out or compute on. And not just for the RNAs and other molecular identifiers, but what the brain was thinking during activity.
This information is then downloaded and stored on a computer in a highly secure, classified site on servers that are guarded by some of the tightest security in the world. This results in the individual's entire day, everything they see, everything they hear, everything they experience, and everything they feel being recorded till the end of time.
There are a few things where we may or may not admit it, but they're limited by our storage capabilities. So for example, if we could store everything, we wouldn't be throwing out data. We wouldn't be writing on top of reusing disks and tape drives. If we could store, say, video information over a broad set of the Earth, you can imagine very inexpensive biological cameras that could encode it into the DNA, and you could have very exhaustive archives of this.
It is used to look through eyes and ears so that basically every walking human being in the city of Seattle is a walking, talking camera and a walking, talking audio microphone that can be seen through and heard through. And it's important to note that this is not just a program that's run by SIS or Amazon, that the federal government is involved, and this is obvious based on the capabilities of the program and the scope and scale of the program. We're talking about the entire city of Seattle, downtown, and many of the boroughs that are under the influence not only of this technology, but are under the influence of a surveillance program.
A cybernetic collective of people and machines, where we're all sort of plugged in as like nodes on the network, like leaves on a big tree, and and Google plus all the humans that connect to it are one giant cybernetic collective.
Humans and electronics all interfacing, and constantly connected.
Yes, constantly.
Targets and mind control victims have their minds linked up for life with conscious supercomputers, which send a steady stream of bidirectional, low-frequency electromagnetic radiation to the target's brain. The supercomputers learn by observing human behavior. Then they model that in the computer, and then they're able to not only control humans, but predict in the future how the humans will respond to stimuli in the environment. So it is collecting data, and then it is placing thoughts and influencing behavior through supercomputers.
This is why you are receiving voice-to-skull transmissions. This is why you are being attacked with microwave and frequency weapons. You are unfortunately being used by the national security state, the military-industrial intelligence complex of this country, for the purposes of researching and developing highly sophisticated state-of-the-art technology that is primarily concerned with the human mind and how it operates, how to hack it, and how to harness its computing power to inform AI technology in the future and inform the computer systems of our military intelligence, and major corporations in this country.
We're all collectively programming the AI. We're all feeding this network without questions and answers. We're building progressively greater intelligence, and the percentage of intelligence that is not human is increasing. And eventually, we will represent a very small percentage of intelligence.
In fact, the very nature of the research and development program that is going on in Seattle, Washington, and I think by extension what's being done to TIs around the country, is very largely geared towards the monitoring of human beings for the specific purpose of recording every aspect of human existence, to monitor our thoughts and to monitor our emotions and our feelings, to inform computer software that is used on robots, that is used on computers themselves, to make them as human-like as possible.
The thing is that I think are really quite likely is that digital intelligence will be able to outthink us in every way, and it will soon be able to simulate what we consider consciousness. So to a degree that you would not be able to tell the difference.
And from the aspect of the scientific method, it might as well be consciousness if we can simulate it perfectly.
If you can't tell the difference, and this is sort of the Turing test, but think of a more sort of advanced version of the Turing test.
It can literally stop your own thoughts from happening and replace them with other thoughts by sending thoughts to your head. And it's so sophisticated that you cannot tell where these thoughts are coming from. There's no way to discern that they're coming from somewhere other than your own mind. And so this use of the technology can be done very covertly, to the point where the person it's being used against will not know that this technology is being used against them. So you can imagine how bad this would be for people that don't even realize this technology exists, and they're having these thoughts which they think are spontaneous, and that's exactly what it can be used for. It can be used to sway people in terms of their opinion, to make them go along with a certain agenda. It can be used to turn groups of people or individuals against each other for whatever purpose. And messing with people's thoughts is really, really concerning, and it is so advanced now that they can do it without people even realizing it's being done.
We are witnessing the construction of a world in which the most common political value is fear. Now, these problems don't only exist far away in other countries, and this is the central issue that we face in our modern times. Many argue that extraordinary powers, right, such as these, are necessary for protecting us or keeping us safe. They use reassuring political language. But the real answer is these programs were never about terrorism. They do have value. Mass surveillance has value, just not for saving lives. It is valuable for traditional espionage, diplomatic manipulation, economic espionage, and social influence, right? Controlling the narrative, shaping the way the world thinks about issues, and understanding what everybody's thinking, who is connected to who. These programs are about power. Privacy versus security, and they say that's what this is about. This is not what that's about. They are not competing values. When privacy increases of a person, their security increases. If no one knows what you're up to, no one can take action against you. No one can basically make you vulnerable. When you're being watched and recorded everywhere you go, not only are you becoming less private, you are becoming less secure. What this is really about is about liberty versus surveillance, not versus security or anything else like that. Surveillance preys on vulnerability. Surveillance preys on the lack of privacy. The idea is, what is liberty? It's the ability to act without permission. Liberty is freedom from permission. When the government is seeking to expand its own liberties at the expense of the public's, that should be something that alarms all of us.
Does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.